Call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Claims in the amount of $844,591.58.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the installation of ramp extensions at Lakefront Park Boat Launch.
Good evening, Finance. Michael Miraz, Director of Public Works and Parks. So in front of you tonight to request using some park dedication fees, Fund 280, to purchase and install some boat launch extensions, some concrete extensions at the launch. When the water is getting low, like it is, now, we're about 2/10 away from record low. Boats are power loading their boats on a trailer, causing a drop at the end of our ramp. And just kind of the nature of the beast with the boats getting bigger, they're dropping off the edge of the concrete and having some issues with getting their boats out of the water and having some trailer damage. So looking to use that park dedication funds to purchase some ramps and have them installed. So there's a couple places in the Fund 280 that I'd look to pull from. The revenue that we collect from the boat mooring, we have an account balance as of March of $114,000, so we could pull from there. Or we have Lakefront Park concessions where we take in revenue from the concession stand, rent and sales, that has $13,000 in there. So either one of those two accounts would cover the cost of it.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I mean, we sit here and geez, since I've been here on the board and on the park board at one point a long time ago, we've been trying to put stairs in for the boat moors.
Mm-hmm.
But yet now all of a sudden we're gonna stick another 12 grand into something we just redid.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand what's gonna happen if it's gonna just break their props open, and are we liable? Or are we gonna be going and replacing concrete every season
Yep.
on that bottom ramp? Or
So
to me, here's the rub, is that these boat moorers have been paying for how long, asking for stairs down to their dinghies.
Yep. Yep.
Now you pulled $12,000 out to do something different.
Yeah, yep. So two things, we have bid that stairs project out twice in the past year.
Right.
Both times it came in way over budget, so obviously not for a lack of trying. We couldn't look at reducing the number of staircases out there and get it within our budget, what we have. That way, they would have safe access, and I agree with you, they have been asking for that for a very long time. That's why there is another option with that Lakefront Park concession money to use. Second, with regard to the boat launch, obviously the design is, the end of the ramp is where it was previously, before we updated it, right? And what's happening is the boats are getting bigger, power loading, right? And Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's continued damage to either boat trailers or props, what's happening is, they're backing off and that trailer's just dropping because there's like an 18-inch drop right off the back of that. We've had a couple people get stuck, had to get towed. They're calling my office saying this, if we don't fix it, I believe we would be negligent, and if there was future damage, we would have to start covering those costs.
Yeah, the issue you have is you have a known condition. And I can speak from experience because I put my boat in down there, and there is a drop at the end, and it's wholly because of the water level. Because when the water level's higher, you're not backing that far.
Yeah, no
so
problem.
Now you back down and you drop down. Okay, you drop down, that's fine, but then you got to pull out. You're going to have, it's not so much the props, it's the axles on the trailers, and so we know that there's a condition. There's really no way to sign that, and there's
The 18-inch lip of a cement slab that was put down there. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna extend it out
Yeah, extend it out 10 feet, right, to get us some more clearance for larger boats to launch and
yeah.
pull
So
out.
it's really the correction of an unsignable, dangerous condition that we have to deal with in one form or another.
and we would be held
But
liable.
it gets worse, as Mike was saying. You got boaters
Yeah.
that
Power.
power
Yep.
load their boats,
I
and
get
when
it.
they have to do it at the end of their ramp, they're digging a big hole back there and undermining the integrity of the entire slab, the end of the slab. So
But
No, go ahead.
But a bird's eye view, do you understand what it looks like when, for almost 20 years, they've been asking for a safe access to their dinghies and they pay rent for that. And then we just put $1 million or whatever the cost was for the boat ramp.
Well, we're doing.
Which I agree, if we gotta finish it, then
Yeah, it's gonna
that's
be
fine.
an added cost later, if we don't take care of it. And the $600 they pay out there per year, Andy, really?
I'm not here to argue that point, but what I am arguing is they've been asking for a long time for safe
Yeah, but,
access.
yeah, as Mike said, we've been working on it.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment? First of all, I'd love to see that as an agenda item because I know we discussed it briefly when we got that bid, which we declined the bid this year. But you're right, the mooring owners they act as a group. They help each other, encourage each other, whatever. They have their sailboats anchored off the Toll Bridge Road. And, we thought we could put in up to 3 stairs with the current bid. And the group of organizations said, no, thank you, we don't want that, we want 5 stairs. So they did push off an improvement because, I don't know what their rationale was for that, but it is true, it's more expensive than we thought, and certainly designing it safely, as you well know, is a key thing. We can't put something in that's not adequate, but that's not really our agenda item tonight, but it's a good one. But I do want to ask Mr. Mraz, Public Works Director, about the funds that come in off of the boat launch. How much, where does that money go? You just gave a report in Parks Board.
Yep, in Park Board, I just gave a report, so that is encumbered into the general operating fund. So it doesn't specifically go to the Fund 280.
I see. So how much income do we get from that boat launch? On a
So
typical
this year, obviously it was, June was a very bad month. We were closed for pretty much the whole month, but we were still able to pull, what was it, 662 plus another 12, so about $75,000 this year in permit and daily launch fees. So with the new launch, we're estimating, if it stays open throughout the entire season, about $80,000 to $100,000 each year.
Okay, but that goes into it, it's a budgeted
Yep.
input? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering the question. I just want to make it clear where we're sitting with this, because it's been a long time. But I understand, knowing that there's a liability there, we have to move forward, so I will move to approve.
Second?
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action to approve an agreement between the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office and the Hudson Police Department for gray key use.
Good evening. So I won't read the entire issue sheet, but essentially, our investigators use software programs to be able to extract data from electronic devices. The software packages that we currently have don't allow us to do encrypted data or locked phones or locked devices, right? So we had to either farm those out to the DCI and wait for 9 months to a year for their backlog to clear up, or we entered into an agreement 3 years ago with Woodbury PD, who had the grayscale encryption software, and they would do our phones for us. They're too busy now. They can no longer do that for us countywide. So the county is looking at buying the software and then charging each municipal agency a portion of that cost. I have it outlined in the issue sheet. For the bigger agencies that use it more often, it would be $2,250 per year. Our previous agreement with Woodbury PD was $5,500 per year. So we already have the money budgeted in our annual budget for $5,500, so this is still a cost savings, and I'd ask that we approve the agreement with St. Croix County so that we can continue to work our investigations of electronic devices.
So,
Move to approve.
second. So will this speed up the process then? Because it'll be available more readily?
Yes, and not only that, we'll have 3 investigators throughout the county that will be trained in the extraction of this, so we won't have to wait for the one person that Woodbury had to cycle through all the devices that they get.
So will one of our officers be trained on it, or just, will they be county
Currently,
officers?
no, because we just had a transition from our drug detective. So the one coming in is brand new and hasn't been trained in the Cellbrite the one that we already own. So we're just going to use the investigators within the county that are already trained in the Cellbrite to train them in the gray key extraction.
Thanks.
All right, motion and second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Agreement between the City of Hudson and West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission for the update of the Hudson Urban Sewer Service Area Plan.
All right, we got a grant,
Yay.
albeit not massive, a little over $26,000. Working with Regional Planning Commission, the committee might remember 2 or 3 months ago, authorization to apply for this grant. This is really important for the city in that this plan, this Urban Sewer Service Area Plan, has not been updated since 1997 and is wildly outdated. It does provide for some additional capacity or growth areas to the east, but if there's any growth that were to occur to the south, our current plan would not provide an allowance for the city to expand its wastewater utility in that direction. So this is a really necessary plan as we look to move forward with implementation of our comprehensive plan, looking at growth areas, things like that. It does, like I said, includes the $13,000 investment by the city. It would be funded through the wastewater utility, obviously because it's mostly about wastewater and expansion of wastewater utility. So with that, staff would recommend approval of that $13,000. And moving forward with the update, it would take approximately a year, starting in early November of this year and wrapping up at the end of December 2025.
Move to approve?
Second?
We got a motion and a second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. City of Hudson federally mandated drug and alcohol testing policy.
Okay. Working with our city attorneys, both Nick and Lyda, what's her?
Bannock.
Bannock?
Bannock.
Bannock. We were looking at the drug testing that we need to do for anybody that has a CDL, and we realized we do not have a clear policy that is approved by the city that works in conjunction with how we treat CDLs. Employees that have a CDL license, commercial driver's license, our plow truck drivers and others. We don't have a policy in place that works with the current DOT policy, U.S. Department of Transportation policy. So we need to kind of sync those things up. And as part of this, there's changes in the very next item on the agenda. There's changes within our own personnel policy handbook that need to be updated to match with the DOT changes as well. So this is a policy that we just need to look at, approve. It's a mandated drug and alcohol testing policy for the city of Hudson to make sure that we stay legal and clean when we have to do these CDL tests.
Is this just something we just ran into, housekeeping kind of?
It's a housekeeping thing. So when I came on board, we started looking at all the different things that we have. We have a number of policies that we're going to have to bring forward. We just don't currently have in place. So thankfully, Lyda tagged this on a recent issue that we had, and this one just happened to be one that we needed to get in place quickly.
Well, and I appreciate it because I think that it's been long overdue, a lot of our policies and procedures as far as employee onboarding and any orientation,
absolutely.
or any of that
Yep.
has ever been addressed. So it's nice to see a new, fresh set of eyes on it. Whether it was your directive or initiative, I would really encourage you to continue to do it throughout.
Yep, and we're looking at, Sam and I are turning the page on a financial policy that that is not currently, we do not have a current, not even, I don't think we just don't have a financial policy in place for the city of Hudson. So we're taking a little bit of what we have from what he's used to, a little bit of what I came from, mashing it together to make sure that we have a clear financial policy on a number of different issues and how we handle funds. So, yeah, there's a number of those policies that just are not in place here. So we're working on those.
Great. I'll move we approve.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve. Discussion?
Well, I also wanted to thank you. I assume that you detected a gap there of that we needed this in our policy book, so I appreciate that. I was wondering about you mentioned specifically the CDL, and they use the phrase safety sensitive or something like that. Do we have any employees that happen to, in their personal life, have a CDL, but don't use it for work, but might, in an emergency, be called on to use it? I mean, is there, how do we look at that?
No, every employee has a job description for their particular job, right? So CDL is either required within their job description or it is not.
Okay.
Right.
So if it's not required, and I'm assuming it's
Exactly.
mostly public works
Yep.
issues. For example, I know people who have a CDL because they drive their church bus for youth
Oh, sure.
outings, things like that. And so it's just something that they acquired
Mm-hmm.
in their personal life, might work for the city. They're not going to be
They wouldn't be subject to
It's
this.
just
If it's
people
not
whose
required
job
within their,
description.
yes, if it's not required as part of their job duties, they're not identified in this.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Amend the City of Hudson Personnel Policies Handbook.
Okay, as part of this, as part of the approval of the federal mandated drug policy that we just went through for the DOT, for CDL licenses, Lyda and myself, our attorney's office, went through the personnel policy manual as a whole, realizing that we needed to add in both the drug policies, plus there was some shop cleaning that needed to happen within the personnel policy handbook. So these updated policies will be handed out to and detailed out to our employees if approved here and at the council. If you go into the report, I won't use the overall pages, but there's a full description we included the entire personnel policy edited version. If you go to page 10, and I'll just step through, there's 5 simple changes, including the inclusion of the CDL piece. Page number 10, which is section 2.6 of the personnel policy, this piece gives further direction for harassment or discrimination complaints. It's something that we needed to identify, that if they're not getting the results they need, what is their next steps, right? So there was no, it ran into a dead end, and realizing that you needed to continue on. If you're not getting an answer from somebody, you should continue on in your quest to get satisfaction for what you need.
So you're just
that's-
adding the red line.
Yes, we're adding the red lines there. So the next one is on page 37 of that manual, which is section 5.13, which is additional changes to make sure that it's a welcoming workplace and more available and respectful to nursing mothers. So that is another requirement that we needed to give some changes to.
And I see the next one on there is social media. Is it, and I don't know if you had the conversation with the mayor, but in the past, we've had some issues. Is it cover comprehensively kind of those issues that we've had dealt with?
I'm not sure on the specific issues, but it is intended to, I guess, protect the employee in some of those issues. I know that one's coming up here.
Protect the employee,
Well,
but protect the city's liable for it, or?
Yes. We'll get to that piece, and
Okay.
and maybe, Nick, you can kind of take a peek at that, too. That's going to be on page 74 of the manual, 9.1.5, social media. Okay, so before we get to that one, though, let's, the next item on page 66 was simple grammatics. Just needed to identify the legal drug or having the prohibited level of drug, of alcohol, all right? So that was a simple grammatical change. Then, we go down to the social media piece. It's to, clearly identify the employee rights, outlining, so this really kind of outlines employee rights and other aspects of the law. So kind of, Nick, maybe you can help me with this. This is one that, and I apologize, but Lyda helped insert.
Yeah, it would appear to me that it's the added language simply clarifies that nothing the city is doing with social media, or no restrictions that the city is imposing on individual employee social media use, is meant, those regulations are not meant to prohibit or restrain an individual's right to free speech.
Yes.
Because there are protected free speech rights, and if somebody is a whistleblower, or if somebody is raising an issue, or if somebody is saying something that may
Thank you.
not necessarily be in the employer's interest, but may be protected under the free speech rights, that we're not attempting to limit those in any way.
Of an individual employee or
Correct.
their social media space.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so then we get finally to what we just talked about, page 67 of the manual, which is, let's see, section 8.2, I believe, is, let's make sure I'm in the right section. I think so, section 8.2. This is required for the CDL, DOT CDL standards. And then again, just below that, adjustments to current requirements and standards, just a small adjustment being made to kind of clarify and make sure that we stay legal within our language. And then the final one is on page 68, which allows the city to enforce this piece of our personnel policy, even on a first offense. So a first offense could be pretty dramatic, and we need to be able to enforce that. Okay, so that is the overall changes to the personnel policy. Just kind of, again, some housekeeping and making sure that we're staying to the good side of decisions that were made out there, legal decisions that might have been made out there over the years.
And Brent, just to make clear on that last point,
Yep.
the even for a first offense relates to termination. So if there
Yes.
is a drug or alcohol violation of a user of a commercial license, or a holder of a commercial license, that termination on the first offense is possible depending on the circumstances of that particular offense.
Yep, thank you for the clarification. Yep. Okay.
All right, is there a motion?
I move to adopt the amendment changes to our personnel policy handbook.
Second.
Motion and second to approve, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Personnel Policies Handbook Amendment, add section 5.10.5, post-employment witness and compensation.
Okay, this was asked by, let's see, trying to get down to it now. Whoop. Okay, so we have employees that do, for instance, our police officers. If there's a case that, say they've retired or moved on from service in the city of Hudson, the question being, should they be paid to come back and testify for cases that they might have taken part of? Okay, so can the police officers come back, and should they be paid in some fashion for testifying on behalf of the city in particular cases that might have come about? So I know I've been talking with some other groups out there, administrators out there. This isn't typically done in a lot of different places, but there is the language that would be proposed here, the new policy of 5.10.5, post-employment witness and compensation. This allows the city to possibly compensate those employees for post-employment, anything after they've already been here. So it would pay them under paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4 of section 4.7, travel expenses and other things that are available there in our personnel policy manual. And then also their previous hourly rate not to exceed $350 a day for their testimony.
May I interject something? The big issue is that the clerk of court will not pay our retired or former officers the witness fee. So they're essentially being subpoenaed into court and not getting any kind of compensation for it. They read the statute differently than any other clerk's office in the state of Wisconsin, apparently, and they will not pay it. So,
Yep. So this qualifies for not only police officers, maybe if there was another employee that is called to testify for anything that might happen while they were working, or character witness, or maybe a witness to something that they had seen.
So the situation is, we have an investigator that investigates a criminal proceeding. It then winds up at the county. DA charges out, there's a trial, our investigator retires. Our investigator is subpoenaed not by us, not by the city, but by the county to testify in that proceeding. And so they have to prepare, they have to review case file, and then they have to be available for testimony. And so, as the chief has said, they're not getting paid by the county, they're not getting paid by us because they're a former employee, they're a retiree. And the question is, you know, what do we do about that? Do we have a policy that covers everybody in that potential situation? Do we deal with that on a one-off basis, request to the council? We could, you know, frankly, we could do either. We have a situation that's kind of been kicking around for a little while where we've had a request to know what we do, because we have an individual that's affected by this situation, and we don't have a policy on it. So that's why it's before the finance committee and will be before the council. And certainly, you know, if there's a policy, this is the policy that's recommended. If you prefer to see it on a case-by-case basis, you could go that route too. But we're trying to solve an issue where there's no current policy at the moment.
Well, and just to correct that, I put it only on the finance committee agenda because I thought it should be talked about here before we consider moving on to another step. I didn't want to have it as a here and then directly to council, because there's a lot of parts of this that I think are kind of are a little tricky, because again, this doesn't happen very often.
And it doesn't refer specifically just to law enforcement.
No, it would be it was applied in general, because I think if it's in our personnel policy, you really need to apply it throughout. If it's part of, say, the police union contract or something, then maybe that would be more specific to adding it into something like that. But this would apply to all personnel.
So
And
budget,
the possibility of it happening, and how often has it happened already that somebody retired has had to come back or left the police?
this is the second time that's happened in the last 3 years, probably.
Okay.
so budgeting purposes under 4.7 under the general guidelines, but it would come out of the general budget, operating or general fund, or are we budgeting
My
for?
proposal would be it would come out of the department.
So out of Jeff's.
Yep.
And no
Or-
penalization to him?
Well, or whatever department would be involved in
Yeah, because
litigation.
it could be any department. Yep. That's involved.
Right, we're talking about a police officer coming back, but what you're saying is this is written broadly enough that it could be
Yeah, I
Someone
mean, if
who
there's anything
served,
that another employee
Whatever
needs to
capacity.
come back for, you know, whatever. I mean, it could be a character witness of another employee, could be, God, I don't even want to bring stuff like that up, but it could be some embezzlement case or something like that where they need to come back and witness for something. I don't know. I mean, it could be a number of different things. Of course, that would never happen with our current new finance director, so we don't have to worry about that.
My question then is, has this come before us, before the council or finance? I mean, if it's an issue you've been struggling with or had to deal with a couple times now, it just seems that, you know, it could have come before council. We could have remedied this without having to deal with
Yeah.
changing the ordinance.
Well, it was like Brent said, right? Like we would ask other agencies if they do this, and they don't. The sheriff's office does, but that
Yeah.
kind of makes sense. They're in the same county, right? They have the same set of policies. So when the first situation arose, we asked around for ideas. I went back and forth with the clerk of court's office and had some different statutory opinions. There's been any court cases on it. I talked to finance about it. The answer was essentially, they're no longer an employee here. We have no physical way to pay them. So that's what message was relayed to the former employee, and they let it go. Situation 2, the employee has been a little bit more persistent. So we spoke about it with the council member who got the information. We spoke about it with our attorneys. We spoke about it with the city administrator, spoke about it with finance. And that's what led it to us, let's try to figure out a problem or a solution to this problem and get it corrected.
And there are ways that you could make that, pay the individual through a contract employee or something like that.
So my biggest concern in reading through this is that this isn't necessarily, it's not confined to just paying somebody that's subpoenaed in support of a case that the city is defending. I'm sorry, prosecuting, but it could be applied to somebody that's subpoenaed to come in and testify against the city. We would be compelled to pay them to come in and testify in a lawsuit that puts us in jeopardy.
Well, and to reiterate, I don't think those would be an issue. They would get the fee paid by the clerk of court's office. There's a statute that the clerk of court goes by with witness fees that says, in general, if the testimony being given is because of the employment of a police officer, that the agency of that officer needs to be responsible for it.
But you're again confining it to law enforcement.
Right.
Our ordinance is not confining it to law enforcement.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying, is if it was another employee, they would not have any problem getting the fees paid by the clerk of court.
Well, if
And we could work some
they
language
could
in
double
there.
up. So if you have an employee that is suing the city on, let's say, a personnel issue, and they have a colleague that they would like to subpoena to come in on their behalf, so it could be civil, could be criminal, we would, according to this language, we would have to pay them. So anyway, I think we
Which
got.
is why this
I
is
think
the
we
first
got a
kick
little.
at it.
We got a little ways to go on
That's
this.
correct.
After reading this, it just seems to me, because it doesn't happen that often, and each one of these cases probably is going to be different. I don't see any reason why we can't consider that, but I would want to do it on a case-by-case basis, personally.
Could I ask?
Sure.
So what is the fee that the clerk of court pays? Is there a set fee for witnesses per day?
Yeah, it's set by statute. I believe it's something like $20 or $25 a day.
Okay. And, well, I definitely am appreciative of any former law enforcement officers that come back.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if that's a case that's going to court, it's a significant issue in Hudson, some kind of criminal event. And so I appreciate that, the willingness, and I hear what you're saying about the difficulties. So at this point, you aren't authorized, you haven't had a way, even if you wanted to pay it out of your own budget, there's no way to do it because that person's not on the payroll anymore.
That's correct.
There's nothing there, okay? All right, well, let's keep thinking about it and working on a solution. Like you said, you've already gone through quite a few steps with the St. Croix County clerk, and they don't seem to be amenable to a different interpretation.
They are not.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
And I would offer though two comments. First, if it's your thought that these matters come on a case-by-case basis, we should probably have some baseline to just, are we going to authorize the witness fee, or are we going to authorize an hourly fee or whatnot? That being said, secondarily, I mean, we can certainly take this back, add additional language that limits it to criminal cases on behalf of the state, where the witness is not entitled to a witness fee. So we can create more of a box around this too, so that it doesn't have that broad-based interpretation where we're really only trying to dial into or zero in on the particular cases where there is no compensation available because of this statutory interpretation.
So in the meantime, is this hanging out there, Jeff? Do we have a instance?
I believe he's subpoenaed for a case in November.
Okay, well, why don't we, while this is being worked on, why don't we deal with that? And let's, between now and the next meeting, figure out a way to have that discussion on this particular case.
Okay, so I'm the one who was contacted by this retired police officer who went to court, didn't have any compensation for that. I believe that he should be compensated for the time that he spent testifying on behalf of the city. And so, I talked to Jeff about it, talked to Nick about it, and then Nick said that we really need a policy to do this. I think we should do something about this sooner rather than later. If we can't get this policy going right now, we should plan to pay this retired officer sooner rather than later, so that we can get that off the books.
Well, I would agree with that. And I would say, can we get that on the finance committee agenda for the next meeting, or is that a closed session type of thing, or?
Well, it depends upon how you want to handle it.
Either
If
way.
we want to modify this existing policy to work through the problem, or if we want to look at,
Well, it's gonna take
Individual.
some additional language writing on this. I would rather deal with this case right now and then work on the language in the meantime.
okay. All right, I'll talk with our attorney's office and figure out
Let me just,
what may be possible.
well, and let me just ask a question based on the specifics of what's been provided. Is there any objection to the financial component of the policy? I think Brent had set it up to $350 a day. My sense is we're going to go back and rework this policy to limit who is eligible, but what about the financial component and the dollars that Brent has suggested? Because that may then give us some substance to talk with this individual about anyway, to say this is what the council is considering and this is what's likely to be presented before the next finance committee.
What would you like to do to accommodate that?
Well, I'm just more so interested
We
in,
can we vote on that right now? Is that, we're taking,
no, but if there's, I just wanna, I'm interested to know whether there's any dialogue on that particular threshold.
I don't have an
I don't
objection.
have a problem with that. I think that it's appropriate. They should be paid their hourly rate, and then if they would be getting paid for other miscellaneous expenses due to travel and things like that, then,
I'd like to understand how one county clerk out of the whole state is able to strong-arm us into doing that. I mean, I'm not opposed to taking care of our situation, but maybe a little more due diligence to find out if that's even appropriate or not.
We can talk with Corporation Counsel about it as well to see what Heather Amos's interpretation is. That being said, I'm sure nobody's ever challenged it because nobody's gonna sue the clerk of court to get a ruling on it, which is why you don't have any case law and no precedent, and they've just issued their interpretation. But I can certainly follow up on that as well.
Bill them back.
Yeah. All right, so I don't hear any objection to the dollar amount.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll work through it. Okay.
All right, so we'll just set this aside, and Jeff, in the meantime, let's try to figure that one out in that case.
Yep.
Thanks. We good? All right, health insurance increase of 3.9%.
Well, we got our health insurance amounts back, and thankfully, the increase was held to 3.9% overall, which we started at 10 in our budget, reduced it down to 7, thinking, oh boy, we may have to come back with more. Well, it turns out 3.9%. That's pretty darn low. State averaging is looking at about 9%. So somehow our insurance is holding tight at 3.9. So I would say, accept that and pass it on to council. And then
Move to
we'll sign
approve.
it and go forward.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
I do just have a question, but perhaps we'll discuss that in council about any impact this will have favorably on our budget.
Well, the budget was reduced overall by about $100,000. About $50,000 of that was in utilities. That doesn't have an impact on the budget. The final amount, $50,000, does have an impact on the budget by about $2 per 100,000 of assessed
From this
value.
change that she's
From
asking.
this
Right, just from
healthcare
this.
change,
Okay,
yes.
and we can discuss it further
Yep.
in full council. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on 2024 room tax community subsidies.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. What you have in front of you this evening is, as Mayor said, the room tax community subsidies. As a way of a bit of background for those in the audience or at home. The city levies a 3% room tax on lodging establishments within the city. That 3% is meant to promote tourism within the city. Lodging establishments remit that tax on a quarterly basis to the city. The city then splits that 70-30, 70% going to the chamber, 30% being retained by the city. I'll note that the 70% is also remitted to the chamber on a quarterly basis, so they get a check as the city is seeing those tranches of money come in. What you have in front of you tonight is the mayor's proposed spending of that 30% for the year. I will note that it is October, and I believe three of the amounts, the amount for fireworks, the amount for the concerts, and the amount for flower baskets, have actually all been expended already. Those amounts did come in previous claims to both the Finance Committee and the General Council. In an effort to remedy that in future years, we will be bringing this earlier in the year, probably in an April, March timeframe, I think we decided.
Possibly even, yeah, March or February, yeah.
So that the council and committee will be approving it prior to those funds being expended.
Yeah, I think the earliest one in the season is the Hot Air Affair, which is in February, but other than that, everything else falls after that in March.
So with that, I guess I stand, or rather sit for questions.
I'll move for approval.
And second.
We got a motion and a second to approve. Discussion. I just want to note that this has been amended throughout, the course of the year and can be amended again, right? We are still waiting to see what our 30% is going to be from, all right, our total for the year.
Yes, yep, we have a projection, but,
We've been,
Go ahead.
our 30% has been running a deficit now for 2, maybe 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. One of the things, I was a little remiss in this, I should have announced this at the beginning of the meeting, but you have now heard from our new finance director, Sam Hazu, who you all know, obviously, and had a chance to interview through the process of hiring him. Sam comes to us by way of Inver Grove Heights and River Falls, and I can't tell you how delighted we are to have you with us, and I look forward to a long and productive career here.
Thank you.
All right, anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned.